Silver mirror parted like the Red Sea. Not really the wide, more the size of Mercury's thermometer's silver droplets when they ball up, break out of a broken glass thermometer, and appear to be metal edible candy sprinkles on a cupcake. No, not that small. Rather the size of a dressing room mirror that you slip through while trying on clothes, the way a silver dollar fits into the slit of a piggy bank to enter. No, rather slipping through a slot the way a sunbeam slices through the sponge cake of a cloud. No, not a sunbeam, rather a strong light beam that comes out of a stage light. Complete circle. To put a spotlight on an actor, actress on a dark stage. Yes, that's it. Stepping through life's mirror is being present, center stage, in darkness, and having the circle of light find you, shine on you, as if the circle of light is something you slip into when you're born and slip out of when you die. And the whole moment of appearing and vanishing is this magic trick called life, which is mysterious as a momentary ringing in your ear, which is mystical as your ability to unconsciously breathe in a dream or while you sleep, and how your heart unnoticeably beats an electric light, switched, turned on, and then turned off. Of a spontaneous, prosaic poem written while waking from an uncapitalized dream. This is a poem from tonight's guest Diane Sahms' most recent book, Of an Octopus, an Architectural Awareness of Words. Good evening and welcome to Philly Loves Poetry. My name is Charles Carr. The focus of Philly Loves Poetry is to give our audience the experience of the rich culture of poetry in the Philadelphia area, and to bring to you some of the leading poets in this area. And tonight we have a very special poet. And before I launch into giving her bio, I want to say something about the contribution that Diane and her husband George have made to advancing the love of poetry in this city. They've founded and started something called the Fox Chase Review, which was an absolutely wonderful poetry journal and a poetry reading series up in the Northeast. And then they took a little time off, but they came back and they started another online poetry journal called North of Oxford, which is wonderful. And you should go in and look at it. You just can Google North of Oxford. But they have made major contributions that I will say to you, they are one of the few people I really call cultural treasures of Philadelphia. So Diane is a native Philadelphian, a former Miss Roxborough, 3 times city gymnastics champion at Roxborough High School. She is the author of 9 poetry collections, most recently Of an Octopus, an Architectural Awareness of Words, which was published by Carbonation Press in 2026. Diane was awarded first place in Judith Stark's poetry contest, Partisan Press Working People's Poetry Contest, and she received a poetry grant from AE Ventures Foundation. Diane is published in North American Review, Northern Virginia Review, Valley Voices, Ciaran Review, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Pennsylvania Literary Journal, and many, many more. Diane is also, as I said, the poetry editor at North of Oxford. She worked as a contract specialist for the government and as a high school English teacher, and she now resides in Northeast Philadelphia, where she raised 3 children, and now she is a grandmother. So welcome, Diane. It's really Great to have you. So this is really a very interesting adventure tonight because this is a very different uh, approach to poetry that this program has ever seen. Number one, and surely it's a departure from the poetry that I know of yours. I mean,
Yes.
this your history of narrative poetry, your history of persona poetry, even your history of places poetry. So this is really departure. But I wanted to share with you the experience of approaching this book.
Okay.
As I was reading it, because, and I'll use the word. It just came to me as I was going. I said, shattering. This is kind of this book shatters, the logical template that people think poetry should have. And I sat back and I said, "Oh, this the beauty of this is for me is the experience in the shattering, in the process of letting go of this template and moving with something that's radically new, but under this, I'll call it an arch, is still your gorgeous poetry. Your narrative is still there intact. I just read, a poem that's in this book, and that's very much in your tradition. Um, so I want to, of course, pose to you is what led to this? What's the background that you move from this one style of poetry that most people know you by,
Yes.
and we wind up with this, which is radically different. So the floor is yours to share with us how a poet, how an artist, really moves into this.
Well, I think in life is an evolutionary process. So you keep reinventing yourself, you keep growing, you keep changing. And I was working, a full-time job, and poetry was a challenge to keep doing. And I did do it. I did 8 books that led up to this ninth book, and I did all kinds of poetry. Nature poetry, Philadelphia poetry, character poetry, love poetry. Also, I was experimenting a little bit then too. In one book, I did Global Dreamers and Coexistence, which is all about Lascaux, the caves, and that was a research poem. So I've kind of went full gamut. I also did the Luna, the Lesser Light, which was very
Yeah.
structured and very formatted. I used, the haiku and the tanka and whatnot. So I tried to do a little bit of everything. I also did like villanelles and free verse and whatnot. And I was writing a book my last year of working. I retired in October of 2024. And while I was working for like 2 to 4 years before I retired, I was working on this book called Language of Air. And it was in a grid. It was the capital letters of the alphabet, A to Z, were the titles, and then the lowercase letters. And it was in the grid, and I kept working it, and pretty much. And then in February, well, I'm always reading anthologies, and so they kind of seep into your writing. They change the way you think about things as well. So I do a lot of reading and studying of other people's poetry, especially anthologies. So then I finally decided that I was going to try something new. I was reading a lot of Chinese anthologies. I love the way they mix metaphors. That was very nurturing for me. And then finally, I decided, let's see where this takes me. I woke up in February and I did these word art poems. There's a set of 5 in my journal. And I liked what I was doing, so I put it into a chapbook. These newer structured poems that you're seeing in this book, very architectural, topographic, colors, gradations of texts, using different texts. And I was kind of experimenting. I was making it new for me. I was tired of my old way of writing, and I wanted to challenge myself to make it new for me. So I did. And what happened was I started to send my newer poems out, and they were getting accepted. I sent to hashtag Ranger, and they took all 5. And I sent to Amsterdam Review, and they took one of my pale yellow ones. So this new experimental way was being rewarded for me. So I was very excited about that, and I decided I was going to break Language of Air, which I had sent out. It was a finished manuscript. I withdrew it back, all 6 copies, and I broke it out of its grid. And I allowed the poems to dictate what they wanted to be in form on the page. And I came up with this.
Can I just take a little break here? This sound is distracting out of here. It's okay.
It's distracting me. I kept losing my train of thought with you, Carr. Yeah, I kept hearing myself, and I was losing my train of thought. I was losing my train of thought, and I was having a really hard time. Did you see me pause? It's like, oh my God, it was terrible. Yeah, the feedback. Oh my gosh, it was making me crazy. I'm so glad you said something.
Yeah, thank you.
It was making me crazy.
I was trying to find a place that would make sense.
I'm sorry for that interruption. Diane was in mid-sentence. There was some activity outside the studio I thought that was interfering with us, but we're going to continue. Everything's fine right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I was at the place where I said I withdrew my other manuscripts, Language of Air, and I broke them out of the old form. And I was using this new form that I created where I made the chapbook, and I put it all together. It's more of a conscious awareness of what the poem wants to be on the page. Instead of me making it be what I wanted it to be, I released the grasp of me controlling form, and I allowed the form to present itself. So it's a conscious awareness of what is going on with each poem. So I honored each poem. If it wanted to be a certain form, let's try it. And I worked with these forms for a while, but I had the poems. So all I had to do was break out of the grid and allow them to be in the form that they were dictating to me. So it was a higher level of consciously being aware of what I was doing. Like, I'm aware of what I'm doing now. And I've been writing almost 30 years, so I think that came with my growth, and I think that came with doing 8 books, just staying at it, staying at it, staying at it. So it's an evolutionary process. It's new, it's experimental, and I'm having fun.
One of the things that came to me as I was reading it, and once again this kind of a epiphany of kind of turning poetry on its end in a way, was the whole notion of motion, movement, and unity in a poem. What really makes, I'm not asking you in this, but it raised the question of what is movement in a poem? What makes it unified? And can we walk away from that kind of unity and traditional movement in writing poetry? I'm just sharing an observation. You don't necessarily have to.
Well, I'm thinking that maybe you can see the movement in these graphic poems by me sharing them.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we could put up the first graphic of my poem of a blanket octopus I can answer the question with the graphic. So here we have the second part of a 3-part poem. The first part and the third part are very short, so I didn't include them on the graphic that you're seeing. But what happened here is a blanket octopus is changing colors because to protect herself from prey, So she changes her colors and she unfurls this beautiful 6.5 foot blanket to make herself look larger in the open ocean. So if she's changing colors, then why don't you have a blanket octopus on the page that is changing colors? So the movement here is it's changing colors to protect herself from predators. Also, which is nice about this, because she's always changing and she's changeable, this has been constructed. You can read this anyway. So I'm going to read it two ways.
Okay.
But so this is where I think it's answering your question, because I'm showing the movement of the octopus. I'm showing the colors that are changing. And then there's a lot of repetition, a little Gertrude Steinish. So you'll hear that as well. So here it is. Of these suffocating and stagnating waters, floating open ocean for years, now blanket octopus unwraps a part of self, of a blanket octopus. Dragging her color, changing color, changing she, changing from arms, detach, unfurling, unfurl, unfurling, and detach a part of who she was, who she was, who she was, deep, 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 depths, depths, depths of pain, body's pain, enslaved sufferings, entrapment of who she was in the arms of time. And here's another reading. Dragging her color, changing color was, changing she, of who she was, changing was, from, was arms, from who she was, arms, detach, deep, 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 depths, 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 unfurling of pain, unfurl body's pain, unfurling enslaved and sufferings, detach entrapment, a part of who she was. She was in the arms of time, of releasing grasps, the pure sands of imagination, mystical tides, emergence of three hearts.
Wow. Wow.
So an octopus has three hearts.
Well, I have to say, one thing I love about poetry is I find new things that lead me to dive deeper into it. I never heard of a blanket octopus. I've always heard of an octopus.
Right.
So, and your explanation that this is a certain kind of octopus, and when you talk about this constant changing of color, was very informative. Diane, one thing I wanted to ask you, and I came upon several years ago a Chilean poet by the name of Nicanor Parra, P-A-R-R-A. And Nicanor is considered, kind of a main figure of what is called anti-poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I was thinking of this conversation that he had at the occasion of the investiture of Pablo Neruda in this chair in Chile. He said anti-poetry is all about the battle with the elements. The anti-poet gives himself the right to say all without being concerned about the practical consequences of his theoretical formulations may bring him. The intention of the anti-poet is to jolt the moth-eaten foundations of worn-out, ossified institutions. Well, that's a lot. I'm not saying this is a category, but I thought of that, and I thought of your work as maybe in that genre in a very different way. Would you accept that, or?
I wouldn't accept that it's Anti-poetry, I kind of like to think of my poetry as being new and experimental and exciting and challenging and fun. There was one reviewer who said it's somewhat metaphysical, meaning it has wit and many layers of meaning. And I was like, wow, I got to look up metaphysical to make sure I know what he's talking about. And I think it's more metaphysical than it would be anti-poetry. And I think it's more experimental and new. And it's also very subjective to me. Like the blanket octopus is a female octopus. She's unfurling her blanket. She's a superhero of the deep. She's not like hugging on the ocean floor. She's out there. She's protecting herself. If there's a predator, she's dropping some of that blanket onto that predator to get him to leave her alone.
Right.
And the male is only about 2 inches. It's the biggest, most extreme sexual dimorphism that there is in the animal kingdom. He's 2 inches, she's 6.5 feet, and he breaks his sperm of, his arm of sperm, and he impregnates her. Now, here's another interesting thing. It's a very empowering octopus, this female octopus. The males will break off their arms, their sperms, and implant them in her, what is it called? It's her mantle, and she will select what sperms that she wants to fertilize. So she has a selective power of choosing the mate that will, that she'll fertilize her eggs, and then she'll lay up to 100,000 eggs before she dies, and she'll take care of them until they hatch. Wow. So she's a very empowered female octopus,
Right.
and so the wit is there, of 6.5 feet to.
Yeah.
So I like to do the wit, which I don't think is so much anti as it is fun and witty and clever.
Yeah. Okay.
I have an interesting sound and sight poem.
Yeah, well, let's move at your pace.
Okay, so Of Laundry is a lot of fun because it's a sound and sight poem.
I have it.
The visual poem is for the eyes to see garments of clothing on lines, literally and figuratively. However, when you hear it read, the air, the wind, the voice is added over the poetic lines, and hopefully one will hear the aliveness of the movements of sounds, close on the lines. So it's called Of Laundry. Fashion for words, flight, winged tongue in upward flight of air, flapping, floating on a clothesline, and long E as in long sleeves, sheets, clothespin, pinching each shoulder of dresses, and pinned at bottoms of each leg of misses, slacks, slips, shirts, and each leg of sirs' trousers with inside-out pockets, air capsules full of wind, and lightness of laughter for hanging sight of a stopped G-string, letter-sounding thong. And X marks the stopped spot in boxers, and the less voice-plosive laughter for bra. But watch out for arousal of racy, red, flimsy, fun-floating, sexy negligee, phonetically negligee. Such a Frenchy, airborne abstraction.
Well, I think I said to this before when we were talking about it. Yes, there is this experiment with language and really the sounds of words and the movement of words. But what is not lost in this, for anybody, is the richness of the actual poetry itself.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if one says, well, I don't want to read it maybe as Diane read it. I just want to read it as I think, as I have a reader, not me, Charles, but somebody else. I say, well, just going to read it to myself. And so if one does that and say, wow, this is a very rich poem from, in terms of the sound and the language and the movement of it by itself without this overlay that you have given and, expanding language in words.
Yeah, I was expanding the language so that you can visually see. If you look at the clothespins, I literally have the exclamation point as the clothespin. And if you think of clothespins, you can see at the DR there's one, and then at the ES there's another. So these are the clothespins, the exclamation points, hanging the dress literally on a line. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then I have the slacks hanging from side to side, and the slips, and the shirts, and the trousers, and the air capsule, when the pockets are full with wind. That also can be a mouth as a pocket full of air. So I'm correlating literally the sounds that I'm making, as well as the sounds of clothes on a line. So it needs to be on a line. I literally have lines. That is the clothesline. The sheets, the long sleeves are on the lines. The pinching each shoulder of dresses. So by expanding the dresses, you're getting that sound of the air from your mouth and the air from the wind blowing over the dresses.
You know what's so fascinating is that anybody reads this, a younger person might say, "What the hell is a clothesline?"
Exactly, and maybe.
And you're saying because we're of that group that had to go out and put those pins in,
absolutely,
and work, work with a mother or whoever to hang those clothes up and then take them down.
It's a lost art. It really is. Yeah. It is. So I think maybe I'm preserving it.
Yeah.
Here, I'm making them see the lines and the clothespins and the sheets.
I think that's one of the great things. I wrote a poem about a clothesline, and it was a humorous poem at the end. And some people say, "Well, clothesline, what a clothesline?" And I said, "Yeah, that's in my genre. That's where you wash and dried clothes, on a clothesline."
Absolutely. I also have you stopping, and the word stopped, and stopped is one of those plosives that's unvoiced, so you have the S, which is unvoiced, you have the P, which is unvoiced, and I have you the word stopping at the end of the line for the reader to maybe stop for a minute. And also, if you're out and you're seeing a G-string on a clothesline, you might stop and be like, "Oh, she wears a G-string," because it's a thin cord. It's like a clothesline, it's very thin. G-strings also are punning on the air on the G-string by Bach. The air on the G-string. So I have the air on the G-string, and that's why I have G-string letter. So everything that I'm writing is not just surface and sound. It's also, there's a lot of meanings and a lot of S sounds because I want the steady stream of air, the C's, the S. I have these plosive voiced and unvoiced sounds like in bra, b. That's a plosive sound that's voiced. So you might stop when you see the bra, or the spot in the boxers. That's a little witty. So.
Well, I like the way the poem ends when you talk about a Frenchy airborne abstraction.
Yes.
Using, bringing in the word abstraction in as a wrap up.
Yeah.
As an ending to this.
What a great word, negligee.
Negligee.
And what a
exactly.
beautiful garment, see-through,
exactly.
Kind of racy.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun. Bone Flowers is very different kind of graphic, my next poem.
Yeah, that's something I want to ask. And I think it was asked by, of you in a former interview, this word fun. A lot of us as artists maybe don't use that word as frequently. In other words,
No.
we're very task oriented.
Everything is
You
so
know,
strict.
you know,
and
and we're at our art and creating, poems or whatever we're doing for an end, and the end is hopefully publishing or acceptance or readings, etc., publicly. But you used the word, and you were asked about, well, was this fun? And I think the interviewer also said, well, can you tell us about when you first started to write poetry? Wasn't it fun then?
No, it was not. I think poetry was very cathartic in the beginning. My dad had died, and I never really wrote poetry until he died. That was in 1997. And when the reason I wrote a poem was the minister said, everybody has to say something about Al, my father, and my sisters were there, and I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What do I have to say? Tell me the objective, and then I'll meet it. And she said, well, somebody wrote, something meditative, inspirational, and I was like, why would I read something that someone else wrote about my father? And she was getting upset with me, and she's like, I don't know, Diane, just write a poem. I don't know. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I wrote a poem. I read it at his viewing. And when I sat down after I read it, of course, I shook, and I was like, oh my gosh, something's happening here. I want to do this. I want to write poetry. And I started writing poetry in 1997.
But it wasn't necessarily always fun.
No. I
But
had
this was-
a lot of things to work out. I mean, not all my poetry was working things out. I wrote character poetry and all kinds of poetry, love poetry, childhood characters, Philly characters. But there was always an element in every book of me trying to work something out, either work out my childhood. My dad drank a lot. I was raised very poor. My mom was a cleaning lady. My dad worked in a textile mill. He had drinking. I was the youngest. There was some neglect, and I had to work through all that. And then I went into a dysfunctional marriage, and I had to write myself out of that. And I did all that. And I was doing other poetry. There wasn't just confessional poetry by any stretch of the imagination, but I was doing a lot of workshops, classes, all kinds of things, editing magazines and whatnot. And I was just growing and growing and growing as a poet until I got here. And now I'm allowing my wit, my fun part of me to come out in my art. I work really hard at this. I think a whole lot about this, and I had to break a whole book out of form into this. And it took a while. And even after I did it, my publisher wanted it in a square, 8.5 by 8.5 instead of the 9.5 by 11. So even doing that, after I had the book completed, I had to reformat everything to fit the square shape. So this book itself has evolved over 4 years in many, many forms. But I knew this last form, 6 sections, all different, all together. I think it's the best of everything I've ever learned in almost 30 years of writing has come together, and it's very exciting, and I am having fun now because I think Billy Collins said we strap a poem to a chair and try to beat a confession out of it. Didn't he say something to that effect? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I've done that. I killed poems myself.
Right.
And the way you learn how not to kill a poem is not to kill a poem anymore. And I'm not going to kill them anymore. I want them to bloom, to blossom like my bone flower.
Okay.
Which is a flower of a daisy.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the graphic? Great. So, bone flowers, which is another name for daisy. Disc, stem, 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 stem. 29 fallen rays on the horizon, 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 horizon. Last ray, disc, stem, 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 stem. 28 fallen rays on the horizon, 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 horizon.
So taking these, and we talk about fun. What is your expectation or an orientation of a reader, to this? And I'm not necessarily saying a reader that, that has experience with poetry. Do you have an expectation of what you would hope they would walk away in being in this experience? I really call it an experience.
Well, this entire book, and then we'll come back. Do you want to talk about Boneflower? And
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll come.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
and I'll answer that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so interestingly enough, I woke up as I did with these 5. There's word art set of 5. So this is number 2, Boneflower, and I was drawing daisies. We grow daisies in our backyard. I did a metaphor poem for my mom called Daisy way back in the day. And I loved the idea that the daisy, when I looked it up, was also called a boneflower. And I thought, I can do something with this. So I had one daisy to begin with, and I had the 29 fallen rays on the horizon. And now the horizon, the words, there's 7 letters in the word horizon. So I times it by 4, and I got 28, but I needed one more. So you see how I tagged that H on the end there? Okay, and so that was in the center of the page, and it wasn't enough of a horizon line. So then I thought, well, let me get another daisy in there. So I put the other daisy in there with 28 fallen rays. And if you look under, the white ray, they all fell on the horizon, but it starts with horizon, 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 and so there's 28 on this side and 29. But the whole word horizon is the horizon line, which the petals, 29 on the left and 28 on the right, have fallen onto the horizon line. A common daisy has 15 to 30 petals. A bone daisy has 22, and I was like, oh man, I want to use the 29. I'm keeping the 29. So then I'm like, I wonder if there's any bones in the human body that are 29. By the grace of God, there is. It's the head, the skull, has 29 bones in it. Bone flowers, skull. They lost all their kind of petals. They're pretty much dead other than the disc of their golden face. 29 bones in the human skull. There's 8 cranial bones, 14 facial bones. There's auditory ossicles. There's 6 of them. And then there's a hyoid bone. And I'm like, this is perfect. There's 29 bones. Not only that, the hyoid bone, which is 1, is responsible for tongue movement and for your voice box, for sounds. And I'm like, we're talking about language. We're talking about sounds. This is poetry, voice production. So that's why I'm reading this, because it kind of doesn't even look like you can read this poem. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to read this? But there's so much going on here. There's so much. And I'm trying to make you consciously aware that if you spell a flower, you're going to spell the stem. You're going to spell the disc. And also the rays, honestly. And then I started even thinking deeper. The Egyptian solar deity is Re or Ra. So we got the Re and the Re and the Ra and the golden disc. Also, rays on the daisy could be spokes of a wheel shooting out. So that's kind of the metaphysical part of it, where it's beyond just what you're seeing. Now, can a reader do that for this poem? I don't know. I don't know if a reader can do that. Maybe they can. I mean, if you watch Maud Poe, they explicate Emily Dickinson's poems, every aspect, every word, every line. And I'm like, well, if they can analyze and explicate her poetry, why can't they explicate visual poetry, architectural poetry, graphic poetry, textural poetry? And now, to answer your question, I divided this book into 6 sections. The first section is a lot of graphic art. Every word that is a color word, like red or pink, is colored red or pink. So this book is consciously aware of what it's doing. Every poem on every page is almost as if you're looking at art. At least in sections 1, 5, yeah, I have 6, 1, 5, and 6. But they're all different. They're all different sections. So if you like graphic art and textures and words, that's the first section. If you like cinematic long poetry, I have 3 sections. I have a language game that's literally, the page is a game board for a language game. I'm playing with the word language all through it. So if you like language poetry and language games, the second section. If you like graphic art, the first section. The third section is more philosophical. It's a mirror poem. It's reflective. It's more philosophical. If you like philosophy and about shadow and light and Carl Jung and that would be for you. And then I have Wyeth. It's a deadly crossing where the painter Wyeth was killed by a train. And I have a lot of intersections going on there, a lot of graphic art, photographs. His grandson was in the car with him and broke his neck and died. So there's a lot of intersections, life and death, the train and the car. So you have that. So if you're a Wyeth or an art person, you might get something out of that. Then I have more traditional narrative with photos and paintings in a section. And that's called Images and Reflections. And they're all images and reflections of different paintings and photos. And then the last section is called Kaleidoscopic Colors. It's full of colors. And in Kaleidoscopic Colors, I believe word art is there, the poem that I just read. Yeah, that's in my last section. Yeah, so there's all kinds of different language, art, colors, graphics, styles. It's really the best of me so far.
Well,
the best version of me.
I'm thinking of, in taking me, out of it, and I'm thinking of a young person, a really young person, that has had no experience necessarily with poetry, and comes into poetry through this avenue. And I would think it's really exciting.
I would
The
like
younger-
them to like this.
the-
The younger people.
A young person say, "Oh, is this poetry? This is really cool."
Yeah, I had a woman who saw a lot of these graphics, and she teaches art in high school. And she said, my students will love this aspect of looking at art with language. Even I think Picasso put some words in his art, when he went to the Cubanistic style. He had even George what's his name? Brock, yeah. He also, would embed some words. Right. Even, there's a Spanish artist. I can't think of his name at the moment. Is it Miro? Yeah, it's Miro. He also put words in his art. He's very experimental, very interesting artist. Right. So it's been done in art, so why can't, in language and in poetry, why can't we put art and colors in our poetry?
Yeah.
And gradations.
Yeah, as I said, that's what I was going through this, I said, wouldn't it be exciting to take, young people, I mean, really even, let's say in grammar school.
Like the rainbow might be nice for them, like seeing
and to say
the arc and the colors.
The fascination of this, and and coming into poetry, this way.
I would hope that it makes it new for people. It's a new experimental way of looking at poetry, and maybe it'll be more fun for students in grade school and high school and even college, even people our age. I think they might see something different and say, okay, this is poetry too. And what is poetry? Poetry is whatever you want it to be. Make it new, right? Ezra Pound, William Carlos Williams, make it new.
Right.
Make it different. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that here. I have a long poem.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I guess I could end with that one because it's about 6 minutes.
Okay.
And I just want to give a different kind of, you saw the graphics. I want you to see this cinematic poem. It's called Mira Mira. And the interesting thing about this poem is it's a 9-part poem. And the 2 final lines I literally coined as mirror couplet, because what I did at the end of every section is the first line in the couplet is original text. And then the second line is the reverse text. That is, the text is written backwards. And by holding the reverse text up to a mirror, it will read normally. So I did that. At the end of every section, there's a reverse word or phrase that is literally written in the reverse text, the mirror text.
Diane, what page does that start on?
This
again?
is on page 59.
Okay.
And once you see it, you'll see what I just said, because obviously they can't see this. And also, there's the word whirlpool, and I have it in the shape of a whirlpool. I have zebra stripes for blinds, open blinds, and I literally have the word zebra, and I have it black and white in stripes. They won't see that, but there are a few graphics, and I have, after the 9th section, afterthoughts, and I literally have the word after the word thoughts on the page, as you can see.
Yep.
Because I'm playing with the idea that afterthoughts, it's thoughts after.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a lot of fun, and you can literally hold this up to the mirror,
Right.
and it will read the same as the preceding line. Of mirror, mirror, one, enter. Sun's wavering light shimmers of shadow, possibly a mirage, until the wall becomes a see-through crystal portal, long length, transparent, porous, clear, glassless window, where one is called by imperceptible voices to enter, to pass through, to slip into, as if walking through a waterfall, disappear, disappear. 2, it's rather ghostly to cast yourself out, sail weightlessly across space, to watch as a bodily observer inner workings of mind's projection. It's amazing to be inside of your body, to have your mind watching you from the other side, from the other side. 3, as darkness fills all space, a spy dreams these lines alive, dilated pupils mystified, mind's disentanglement from tunnel of time, steps into dream's silverish whirlpool, and at midpoint, street lamps lit head light climbs through ladder of open blinds, slices everything into zebra stripes. You ask, did the outside street scene enter this reflective dream, or did room's inner view exit through climbing down zebra stripes of open blinds into a reverse world where dreams never die, dreams never die? 4, moist lips kiss reflection in the pain, then draw away. Lips impress the glass until moisture's disappearing ink evaporates, like poets whose voices have been silenced, as in dead poets. And this would be when death's locked lips place an impervious, wet French kiss on dying lips, tonguing, sucking out all air from pinkish gray defenseless lungs like zoo balloons, shaped as elephant ears trapped behind rib cages, rib cages. 5, everything is without light, blends into nothingness. Even the looking, glass, mirror, everything is drifting inside colorless air. One cannot safely land or live anywhere. Diminished moons, illumined sickle, distant gunshots sound out each night around this same time. In warning? Darkened air breeds mistrust, societal fear, chaos, talk of war and more wars to come. Chaos, talk of war and more wars to come. 6. Unlike the closed eyes of a corpse, sight swims into a new way of seeing as a corked bottle washes up with a message from a dead relative inside its glass body. Do not trust the teachings from the deep. Do not trust the teachings from the deep. Everyone's a loaded gun. Everyone's a loaded gun. 7. Ghost in the looking glass betrayed me today. We argued with each other until she damned God, cursed existence. I told her she shouldn't say those things, so nihilistic, so Nietzschean. I would not let her disappear. I held her down with wrestling strength of an angel until she asked for forgiveness. Forgiveness. 8. I let go. She disappeared. After that happened, the freedom I felt was strange. I didn't know if all our correspondences were in vain. After all, image is nothing but trouble, and maybe that is all this ethereal image in the mirror was. Image in the mirror was. 9. Possibly an egotistical form of imagination to row me through and back to myself again. But I doubted that idea because I loved her as a friend who reflected my image, spoke healing kindness to me. I believe we hold each other close like identical twins, like identical twins. Thoughts after thoughts. No need to draw any more from this reflective pool. No narcissistic afterglow will grow from these rooted musings. No narcissistic afterglow will grow from these rooted musings. My reflective form is fading. All forms disappear as if they were never here. All forms disappear as if they were never here. Even one's shadow ultimately vanishes. It's time to close the portal. It's time to close the portal. If not, spirit might endlessly circle Dante's hellish levels. Time to close the hatch, so not to be trapped. Time to close the hatch, so not to be trapped eternally inside a reverse plane with no way out. Slide the deadbolt, snap the padlock. Slide the deadbolt, snap the padlock.
Wow, that's really rich. So, going forward, you've built this template of yours. So, what's the next step? What's the next phase in growing and nurturing this that you created here?
So
This isn't like a one-off.
no, I have a part 2.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if there'll be a trilogy, but there's definitely going to be a part 2.
Okay.
In fact, I've been working on it and almost completing it at this point. It's in 3 parts, not in 6. It's more daring with the graphics. It's much more experimental. It's different, but it's the same. So it's going to be called Of a Swinging Pendulum, an Architectural Awareness of Words, because it's the same topography, it's the same architecture, it's the same images and graphics and colors and gradations of texts. It's all that I have, photos. Also, I have some photos in here and paintings. So it will be that, and I'm working diligently on completing
that's
that.
exciting.
I'm very
That's
excited about A
yeah,
Swinging Pendulum.
yeah.
It's very time-oriented, obviously.
That's great. You know, that this is kind of like a platform, speaking of architecture, for something something else. And I would say you have gotten reinforcement, for this, uh, through feedback,
Yes.
through it being, some of these being published. And I think you said in the Amsterdam Review.
Yeah, the Amsterdam Review. In fact, I'm working on an interview with them right now. They're very excited about what I'm doing. And so they have given me an interview, and I will be sending that to them. They'll probably publish it in the fall. And it's all about what I'm doing.
Okay.
They want to know what I'm doing, my methodology, what inspired this. And
Right.
the questions are very thought-provoking.
We just have maybe 2 minutes left. Do you want to take us out with reading, maybe a shorter?
Well, I have a shorter one, and it's a fun poem because it's somewhat erotic and a little bit more sexual. So that side of me comes out too in this book. And of course, who better than Rousseau and his last painting that he did for his mistress, Jadwiga, and she was his mistress. And the painting is called The Dream, and I hope you're familiar with his painting. But I have the painting in my book in full color.
Yeah.
So it's called Of Jungle Jungling. Enter Rousseau's jungling of full illumined dense desire, showy as a peacock striking ocellus on a long ornamental feathering, nakedness reposed on a divan, his spread of carved hands fanning out palm leaves, digits of fingers strutting all about her body. She positions one reading glasses arm, the hidden hand, around his bird of paradise flower. Ace feathered fingertips climb up and down flower's stem. Her other hand's machete wanders through wild, overgrown, parting way for a sneaking tongue. Middle mound of lush tropical greenery is where his erotic flower enters, as green tongues meet stormy as leaves undulations in hot, steamy air. Sometimes she chants a looping incantation while jungling, jungling for everything magical and mystical and primitively maddening, dissolving into dream.
Oh, that's splendid. So thank you very much for bringing this to Philly Loves Poetry.
Oh, thank
I
you for
really
having
feel,
me.
honored that we kind of been a way of letting people know about this book.
Well, thank you for having me,
This
Charles.
is really, and it's really good to know that there's a next phase to this. This is like a one-off. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
And
having
thank
me.
you to Mia for being our production tech behind there and making this happen tonight.
Woohoo!
And much, as always, a thank you to Philly Camp for making this production happen. We're in our 10th year here, and this has been a phenomenal experience. But it's just one of the many artistic and poetic experiences that the Moonstone Arts Center brings to Philadelphia under the leadership of Larry Robin, a true cultural treasure in the city. So I say this to say, we always need your support. So we have a website so you can go on and find out and explore how you can support us in very many different ways.